What is going on in the Labour Party? It's quite clear that we are seeing an emergence of different policies from, as far as I can tell. We have the Emily Thornberry policy, which is a bit like negotiating a new deal to leave the EU and then campaign against that deal because they want to remain, to have a Remain option on any second referendum. You've got the Tom Watson policy. He wants a Remain party, essentially, and wants to campaign for a referendum before an election. And then you've got Stephen Kinnock's group, which seem to be arguing they would support a modified withdrawal agreement. Confused? Well, I've got someone on the line who hopefully is going to help us sort that out. That is Dawn Butler, a shadow member of the front bench team of the Labour Party and official opposition. Dawn, hello to you and thanks for joining us.
Hi, good evening.
Okay, you probably were grimacing when I was doing that description of the divisions in the party as they seem to be presenting themselves. But I think it'd be hard to disagree that we are getting conflicting views on on a Brexit policy for the Labour Party, aren't we?
No, I disagree that they're conflicting views. Absolutely. I mean, we've been very clear in regards to ultimately the decision will lie with people and people's vote, essentially. It's the people who will decide where we will go next, and they will get a choice, and the choice will be from a credible leave option and Remain.
But you've got Tom Watson. He wants a referendum before a general election, and you've got and that isn't the official policy, is it? And he's the deputy leader of the party.
But you're right, that isn't the official policy.
But he's deputy leader of the party, so that is a division right at the top of the Labour Party.
Well, no, he is deputy leader of the party. He's entitled to have his views and opinions. There's nobody stopping him from having a view.
But shouldn't you have collective responsibility in opposition?
But we have got collective responsibility, but it doesn't mean that you can't have a differing view. I mean, ultimately, Tom.
Well, no, Dawn. Sorry, Dawn. I've got to interrupt you there because actually, government, and we haven't seen it brilliantly executed by the Conservatives. I grant you in the past. But if you're proposing to be, if you are proposing to be a government and you are saying, which needs collective responsibility, that you act as one, surely to come on and say, well, actually the deputy leader, someone who I presume could be deputy prime minister, he's perfectly entitled to his own separate view and to express that view, even if it isn't government policy. That does strike me as a little far-fetched. You're not united.
Well, I think your enthusiasm should really be guided towards the government, the current government that we have, because it's because of the current government why the country is in such a mess. And as much as you try and divert and pivot and try and blame Labour in some way,
well, Dawn, I've just told you I've spent an hour discussing all of that. I'm sure you will agree. I'm sure you'll agree. We spent an hour discussing all of that, and you are just avoiding answering the question. Are you seriously?
No, I'm not. I'll answer any. I've answered your question quite clearly. Because you don't agree with my answer, it doesn't mean that I'm avoiding answering the question.
So you actually think you can form a government and still have someone who aspires to be deputy prime minister articulate a different policy to the rest of his cabinet, and that's okay? Because if that is your answer, it does kind of...
Well, when Labour are in government, we will have to look at the situation that presents us when we're in government. At the moment, we're not in government. So what we're trying to do is find a way through the mess that this current government has got us in. And we're very clear that we want to have a referendum. So what Tom is clear about is that we want to have, and we have all agreed, that we need to have a referendum. And on that referendum, which is the important crux of the matter, is what will the options be that people will have to decide on? And that is a credible leave option and a Remain option. And there's no disagreement in the party that those should be the options that should be put to the people, and it should be a people's vote.
And do you not squirm at the idea, as put forward by your shadow foreign secretary, probably the third most senior person in your cabinet, that she will go and negotiate a new deal with the EU and then come back and campaign against that deal in a referendum. I mean, they would make mincemeat of her over in Europe. Why would they even bother sit down talking and negotiating a deal if the person they're talking to negotiate that deal is going to go out and not recommend it?
I don't think anybody would make mincemeat of Emily Thornberry around the negotiating table, actually, because she's quite a formidable character. So I disagree with you most certainly on that point. But what Emily was actually referring to is in regards to the fact that there's clear differences in Labour's approach to your previous Prime Minister's approach and your current Prime Minister, who hasn't even been to negotiate this approach. And we have completely different red lines that Theresa May had, for example. So there would be a different approach. But ultimately, and what we really have to focus on, is that we need to not be scared of putting it to the people and having a credible leave option and a credible remain option. And that's the most important thing. People want to know, what is it that we're going to be deciding about? And that's exactly it.
So,
a credible leave and a remain option, and the people will decide.
So, Dawn, you know, there's a lot of that sentiment I agree with. So why did you vote against the general election? I mean, that's how people decide.
Well, actually, the reason why you voted against having a general election is because the Prime Minister, the current Prime Minister, cannot be trusted one jot. Nobody trusts him.
So then get him out of office. Win an election.
And we cannot trust him. Yeah, but the thing is this. You'd vote for a general election, and then in between that, Boris Johnson decides to take the country out of the European Union with being so lazy, not even attempting to negotiate a deal.
You had a general election lined up before that date.
We are not willing to countenance that and make that happen. We're just not willing to do that. We're not going to fall for his tricks. I mean, you know...
So a general election is a trick?
Him and Cummings, you know, behind the doors of Number 10, trying to, you know, scheme up different ways that they can try and
going to the people, which is what you want?
Trick the Labour Party and trick the country just isn't going to happen, no matter how much you try and bully us into doing it.
So hang on, Dawn, hang on. That's a very interesting charge, that they are bullying the official opposition, right, by offering them a general election. I mean, that's a bit weird. It's not weird at all. Well, it is actually.
No matter how you try and twist it, the facts are the same. Boris Johnson is a liar and cannot be trusted. And we have to ensure that we protect the country against crashing out of the European Union without a deal on the 31st of October. And that's a fact. I mean, you know, what do you think of this court ruling? What do you think of that? I mean, Boris Johnson is a liar, prorogue in Parliament. We should be in Parliament discussing this. Why are we not having this discussion in Parliament, in the chamber?
Well, first of all, I think we should just say for the record, since you've been accusing him of being a liar all the time, he obviously says he did not mislead the Queen. I'll just put that in there for now. But of course, Dawn, if you're resting all your hopes on the court case in Scotland, that's obviously going to go to appeal. And so far, and we can't predict the outcome, but so far the UK courts do not feel that they should intervene on what are fundamentally political decisions. So you and I can speculate.
I'm not resting my hopes on that decision. What I'm saying is that it's really quite interesting that nobody wanted to sign an affidavit to say that they can say that Boris didn't prorogue Parliament because he wanted to avoid scrutiny. I mean, it's really quite serious what's happening to our country in the moment.
Well,
and that is what I mean when I refer to the bullying tactics by the club that he has got around him.